What's your name?
Leo.
And who are these guys, Leo?
That's Noah, Mummy and Daddy. This is my dad,
And what's your dad's name?
Stephen. This is my mum, Kimberly. That is my sister, Abby.
I'm Martin and I'm 40 years old, so I've run my own marketing consulting business at the moment. So, and obviously we've got Leo who's 8, Noah who's 5.5, Quinn who's asleep who's 2 in March, and Bridget.
We'll be filming a clip on what it's like to have chemo and how would I word that?
However you like.
How it's like to recover from chemo.
To recover.
We've talked about having an opportunity to let some of the other families know what it's like to finish treatment from a cancer treatment, and start to make that transition back into a different life and a different space after being in that treatment space for such a long time.
Well, I think what we're trying to do is to help tell a little bit about our story so that it helps other people understand what it might be like to go through the treatment and then recover. I think that's a good word, to come out the other side.
Leo was diagnosed with ALL, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, when he was 2.5. And I was 5 months pregnant with Noah at the time. And he was treated intensively for 6.5 months, and then had almost 3 years of maintenance treatment. And he's been 2 years off, just over 2.5 years off treatment now.
3.5 years now, mate.
A lot of threes. I was 3 years old, treatment went for 3 years. And I've been off treatment for 3 years. I do remember the car trip to the hospital, but that's as much as I remember.
The day we took you into hospital for the first time, was it frightening? Were you a bit scared?
Yes.
A bit scary seeing Mum crying?
Why was Mummy crying?
Good question. Why do you think?
Because I was sick.
I think some of the fantasies were that if we did it correctly, if we were able to parent correctly, I had a notion, certainly, that if we fed him the right foods and we made sure he had a good sleep routine and, we chose organic produce and just did everything the right way, held his hand as he crossed the street, that everything would be fine and wonderful. We certainly never imagined that he'd be, ill in a life-threatening way. We had a fantasy that we could, an unspoken one, but one nonetheless, that we could control things and we could make sure that bad things didn't happen. So it was shocking when we kind of were presented with the fact that that wasn't the case.
And what can you say?
When Leo got sick, just before you were born.
There was actually a little bit of guilt behind my reaction to the way we dealt with it. I think because I'd felt guilty that I knew as a mother that he was sick, and I didn't have the courage to actually push the point and get him diagnosed a bit earlier. I think it's almost like I made a mental choice to become actively involved in the care and just not let him down again by missing something.
Noah was quite a gift, Having him and having a pregnancy means life goes on, like it's literally going on. Well, I mean, within me it was going on. Otherwise I might have just stood still and fallen apart, but I was required to keep, pedalling on, which we did, and it was great, and it's a vote for life. And we talked about our sadness with him, and very overtly, but we just didn't want to drown him in it. So we let him see puddles, but not, the whole torrential downpour, which, happened at times, didn't it?
Yeah, happened a lot.
Yeah. So tell me what you're doing.
That's a shark.
Who's this?
That's me. Trying to run on the rainbow.
He was drawing that while we were talking about these things previously. What comes to mind for you guys as you're looking at that?
It's pretty remarkable to be able to sit there and draw a rainbow when we're having this discussion in the background. And there are things that he wouldn't necessarily understand, but he obviously knows that he's been through a lot. You're not sure about the shark. I did tell him to draw something with lines, so we have been watching a bit of National Geographic lately, so he's been into animals and science.
Is that shark the leukemia?
It's eating the leukemia.
It's eating the leukemia. I like that.
It's always there. You sort of always... there's a chance that it can come back, so you sort of always have that in the back of your mind, but the best thing you can do in one sense is get on and start living again. So it's one of those sort of conscious efforts a little bit too, and as we said, we didn't want it to define him or us, but it's always there.
I think it was we were 2/3 of the way through his treatment before I even had the guts to ask what his percentages were. 8 weeks ago, he had a checkup. 2 years and 4 months post-treatment. Again, had worked myself up to a point of being brave enough to say, how are his organs functioning? How are we sitting? So I hadn't been brave enough to specifically say, where are we at in all of this? Now he moves into the lowest sort of risk factor percentage that he'll ever be in, which will always be greater than average Joe.
How reassuring can the numbers ever be?
Oh, marginally.
They're nice to hear.
They're mildly comforting. We sort of instigated the process ending.
I don't think there was any preparation. I think it was, you will see us less often.
A particular date was never stated to us. We just read the literature and came up with a date based on that I believed to be the case, and said to the oncologist, about 3 or 4 months out, this is when I'm thinking, is that accurate? So we started asking questions. What is the process? What needs to happen? What do we need to be planning for, be mindful of? Because we learnt through the treatment process, we learnt how to be better at it, how to be better patients, how to be better advocates for Leo. So we know that he needed preparation and he needed a plan and he needed to know what was going to happen, and we needed to be the ones who found that out and then got him ready for that.
It was kind of weird leaving the hospital. Where do you think the table goes?
Weird leaving the hospital.
I hadn't done it for a long time. Hey, where's Sid?
So we found it frustrating that no one could actually sit us down and say, okay, this is going to be your last session in 6 months. And it was roughly around the time, the dates that are being bantered around, but again, there was no definitive end date.
One thing I wasn't prepared for was to not have to give him the medicine every night. It's one of those little things that you just build it into your routine. The first night you didn't have to do it was a bit confronting in one sense. Like, it was very a good confrontation, but it was sort of that realisation that you've ended and you might be able to breathe a little bit.
And then as you stop treatment, there's a sense of, gee, shouldn't we just keep this going forever? For me, at least.
It's like the safety net's being pulled when all the medication stops. Yeah.
And then what can you do? Can you go climbing trees or all of those things? And I don't know that it ever is a constant thread for me. Thinking about what if. It's less often than it was in the past.
Oh, I wish I lived life like that. It must be mum's curse, I think.
I wasn't ready to not have the medicine be like, I wanted to get rid of it, but not having the treatment was really confronting, because that was the thing that was actively working against the cancer. So the absence of that and the level of monitoring that goes with it was really difficult. We were just, it was a relief, but in equal measure just really confronting, really quite fearful. Leo wasn't ready for the lack of structure. He wasn't used to doing things in life without that process. So to have all of that gone was really quite difficult for him and difficult for us. We had to work on actually structuring in spontaneity. We had to kind of go back to practicing being a bit loose and fast with life, and it took us some time. He was run down and his body was exhausted. So rebounding from that and just recovering his well-being and his health. Every month I would think, oh wow, he's really getting back and he's getting close to 100%, but I would still be saying, I'm still saying that 2 years later. I underestimated how long that would take for his body to just really find its way.
What other comments or advice would you have for parents and families approaching the end of treatment?
Oh, I'd say get informed. Do some reading and find out what is likely to be expected and ask for it from the health team and get prepared. Because it's much easier in some ways to deal with it having a little bit of information on board. I did a lot of reading about long-term effects and monitoring for particular side effects that might emerge from treatment.
It's certainly not deliberate in any way, shape or form, but I think when people say that he's off treatment now, that the world just gets back to the normal.
And everybody else wanted to really celebrate because we counted down for, I remember us counting down, getting to 39 months and counting down. And everybody else just wanted to really celebrate. And we did as well. But there's all the trepidation. And I'm not sure that necessarily people understood that we were sort of stepping into another period of unknown.
It's something that, as a family that's been through this, you never forget and you never will forget, but people sort of around us at the time sort of just, tend to get on with life, and that's fine, but you certainly got to make sure that the support that has probably, was there for us throughout the whole journey is still there. It is one of those things, as Bridget said, Leo's body's still recovering 2 years later. We're all still recovering 2 years later, and I think it's those support mechanisms that are so valuable shouldn't just stop.
Everyone else has life dramas of some sort. It doesn't make us special that our child had leukemia. There's any number of car crashes or breast cancer or bowel cancer or whatever else out there. I hadn't thought about this bit before, but in terms of recovering, the coping mechanisms you put in place during the treatment, you have to be mindful to move on from them when life returns to whatever normal might be.
There's no normal about any of it, and you'll never return to that space, and we won't ever return to how it was. And that's okay. We're all different people now and better versions of ourselves, which is good. But we needed to go gently, and we needed to have the people around us go gently. You need to ask for help and be assertive about what this is going to be like, and get your preparations in order as much as you can. We kept a lot of it to ourselves because we didn't want it to be the defining feature or the main thing that people knew about us. But nobody ever asks a lion if he's okay because you look like you are.
You've got to accept that life's about to be quite different, in that you have a bit more control. Start planning probably a destination of some sort, whatever that is, something that you can focus on to recognise an achievement.
What did we do? We went to Disneyland for 3 weeks.
Not that day. It was a couple of months later. I think we might have had pizza and lemonade.
That was your favourite food
Lucas' special treatment,
throughout treatment, yeah. Pizza and lemonade. We had a big pizza and lemonade fest, didn't we?
We're back to the normal decisions that every other parent has to make, instead of let's just call the cancer unit and talk to them about it.
I think it also pays to establish a really good connection with your GP and, ensure that if you can, that the hospital's actually forwarded all information to the GP, because there's a little bit of a grey area when you finish treatment where it's hard to know whose patient you really are anymore. Do you head into the consultant, to the oncology team if you have problems? Do you go straight to your GP? And I think if you've got a really good communication or good rapport going with your GP, then it works really well for everyone, for the healthcare team at the hospital, for you, for your child and for the GP.
When we finished treatment, I found myself with a whole nother round of anger and in reflection about why did this happen and how did this happen and how did we end up here. Like, it sort of gave me an impetus to consider it again. And without the structure, without the tasks to do, I found myself with more time to think about it. I did a little bit of counselling in that period so I could have some space. We learnt that we needed to not rely on the hospital to put those supports in place for us, and that we needed to go out and find what it was that we needed.
What longer term medical concerns do you have to be aware of?
They're very specific to what particular treatment types your child's had, what sort of surgery, what sort of chemotherapy or radiation your child's had. We've never really had to worry about long-term things like, is he going to be able to have children? Is all the chemo going to affect his fertility? Is it going to affect his ability to have a job and do all the normal things that kids do? It's up to you to investigate it yourself. There are potential cardiac or heart long-term side effects. There can be growth abnormalities, dental, liver function, renal function.
How's your body going now?
I'm fine. I've recovered really well from chemo.
Our oncologist said to us very early on, bless his heart, this is really traumatic, but don't indulge him, because if we're going to save him, we want to save a kid that we're going to like at the end.
And did you indulge him?
No.
No, I reckon we did.
He gets away with a bit more than probably the others do.
But we didn't lower our... see if you disagree. I don't think we lowered our expectations of him in terms of
absolutely not.
his behaviour and in terms of how he manages himself. But I don't think we expected any less of him as a well-mannered, kind little boy. Having said that, that's who he was and that's who he remains. I felt some pressure to be okay and to get back to who I was, and then I felt resentful because I couldn't quite be who I was. I just wasn't as joyful as I wanted to be. And I was saying to Marty that just recently that I think it's this year where I've actually started to laugh deeply again after, a lot of years. So I certainly didn't stop laughing through the whole thing. And in photos I look joyful, but I feel like I've just found that really kind of deep, sincere joy again. And I guess I didn't necessarily know it was missing, but it was nice to find it. But it took some time. It's taking some time. And they're still... Leo had influenza B, because we didn't give him a flu vac this year for the first time in 6 years, and he got influenza B, which was terrifying until we knew that it was influenza B. So we still had those moments where we both just were back with a lump in our throat, unable to take a breath.
Steve and I walked into the school ground, and as we walked in we could hear little snippets of conversation going on, and they were totally normal school ground conversations about which lunchbox was the right one to have bought and did he get into gymnastics on Wednesday night. And Steve and I found it just a little bit surreal because we were just really grateful that Luke was alive and at school. So it was a bit surreal for both of us, I think. Exciting, but surreal.
I guess it's a milestone that perhaps had quite a different significance for you guys.
Yeah, I actually found it to be quite an emotional day. But I got told at work that's normal. The mums have worked through all their emotions by the time this first day starts, and then the dads go along for that first day, and it's, in my case, I'm a little bit teary about it all. I don't think there was anything special about that, just that it was a major milestone in his life. My boy's growing up. Trying to decide when to worry, which cold matters, because during treatment we had any temperature was a problem. Suddenly we've got a temperature of 38.5. What do we do now? And it's making some of those decisions about it's okay just to have a child with a temperature, that's normal. Kids get sick and they get temperatures and then they get better. And that was a bit of a challenge that I can remember.
that was part of it. And then the other part of the challenge was knowing who to go to whether to ring the GP or whether just to
Go
head
straight to
straight into
hospital.
the hospital like we had for years.
You've got that big safety net of always someone to call and talk to. Suddenly you're back to a normal person with a normal safety net.
It's quite frightening how you have this experience in your life that really makes you sit up and live life with balance. It's amazing how quickly you can get caught in the rat race and life just gets frenetic again.
One of the things that we spoke about when we wanted to have made the decision to have a third child was to wait until Leo had finished his treatment. And it was also, a massive positive at the end of 3.5 years of, pretty horrible stuff in a lot of ways. So, so Quinn's, almost 2, and brought us a massive amount of joy and laughter and, probably some humbleness into the house as well. Because you get defined a little bit as a child that has cancer and stuff, and it's nice just to be a dad to someone. They don't know the story. So Quinn doesn't have a clue at the moment, and obviously he'll learn about it as he gets older and stuff. But I think it's really just nice to be a dad to someone who doesn't understand. And there's probably a lot that we missed with Noah. We're at similar ages and stuff too. Because obviously concentrations are a little bit out, and I think with Quinn it's been nice just to be able to see someone go from being born through to he's about 20 months at the moment, and just see all of that development and the walking, the talking, the laughing, and all of those side of things as well.
I don't know, I always felt like there was sort of this, the words that were in brackets, about what could happen to us. We don't know what's going to happen with the cancer and the worst case scenario and that sort of stuff. And that feels like that's shifting a little bit, and we can just be a little family, and that's nice.
They're nice worries to have.
Yeah. When they start school, when Leo played football this year, heart in my mouth, but there he was out there doing it, there we've got a photo of him on a day where the ground is frosted white and he's out playing football. So with all of them, I chew up those moments. I love them, and they make me really sentimental and really proud.
You will feel different coming out of treatment, and I can't tell you how you're going to feel, and you don't know how you're going to feel. Just accept that you're going to feel some way different. That might be scared or elated or whatever it might be. Gee, there's no treatment now, what's going to happen? Or, wow, thank God that's over. I think you just got to accept that you're going to feel something, and there's no way of predicting what that's going to be.
And it might be totally different on any given day, really.
Yeah. And I think that's much the same as having a diagnosis. No one knows how they're going to react to that horrible news or deal with the stress and strain of the experience. Is routine good or bad? Gee, they're getting in the way of my life. All of those things. You don't know how you're going to react to that. And the same thing applies to the recovery, the end of treatment phase. And there is a bit of a journey to go through, and I suppose it's a grieving of some sort. It's a different sort of grief to loss, although you're losing a support network.
In the end, you do really recover from it all, and you can come back to being a normal kid.
What are the hard bits?
Getting over it all. Like, you're used to going back to hospital all the time. You don't have to do it anymore. It's hard to get that into your schedule.
I wonder if the family sometimes misses a bit of the structure and the routine of hospital.
Yeah.
No.
Say that again?
No, I don't miss any of the schedule of the hospital. I think the hospital was a useful support, but the hospital's only a small part of, treating Luca.
And I feel joyful every time I get to pick them up from school or kinder or whatever, and I see them again and get reminded, man, that's my kid. He's gorgeous. He's gone to sleep.
It's a tough life.
What's he going to do at school next year? I know.
You wake him up.
Go to sleep.
We just bought Noah's school uniform for next year, just the other day. So, the huge shorts, the massive backpack, the huge hat. It's fantastic. I love those moments when they're getting engulfed by their new uniform. That's pretty good, isn't it?